25 common misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true. Now, this should definitely be an interesting video. As a person from the UK, I'm going to let you know if I believe any of these things, but I'm very interested to find out the misconceptions. Just before we jump into it, I'd really appreciate if you could hit the subscribe button. It massively helps out the channel we're growing. But let's just jump straight into it and press play.
The United States often draws a lot of flack from the rest of the world for everything. From its foreign policy to the way it runs its domestic affairs. In fact, it seems like there are few things that can divide the world more evenly and more strongly than asking people what their opinion is of the United States. Everyone has an opinion. Even in the same city, you'll meet people who fall on the extreme sides of the spectrum. But what is it exactly that causes America to be so messed up? Even America's own politicians can't seem to stop talking about how messed up things are.
Oh, really?
Well, today we're going to take a deeper look. Are things really as bad as everyone seems to think they are?
I'm
Michael,
interested.
this is 25, and these are 25
Let's
common
get into it.
misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true. And as a very important note, this list was produced by both a United States citizen and 2 European citizens that relocated to the United States. It's written to be as fair as possible. No, I'm not 2 Europeans. Or am I?
No, you're not.
All right, let's begin with a really common thought. Americans are ignorant about the world. Americans are held to an unrealistic standard. Since the rest of the world watch our movies and listen to our music, they know a lot about our country. But let's be honest, they never studied it. People actually complain that Americans don't even know that Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. But neither does half the United Kingdom, and they're on the same continent.
I didn't even know. I've been to that country. I'm bad with geography. I'm definitely bad with geography. So it's not something I could say to someone else that they're bad at geography. I honestly couldn't tell you where every country in Europe is. But America's so big as well. So even if you know the geography of America, to me, that's knowing a lot.
It turns out that all of us are pretty bad at geography. You'd think America would be better at it. However, considering another common thought is that America spends its days spying on everyone. And that's true. But who doesn't? Germany, France, Switzerland, Japan, Iceland, and all the rest of us spy on each other and ourselves. Moving on, America has been called racist. Please don't take this the wrong way. Racism definitely exists, and it makes the news.
Yes.
But you know what else? America also has a vicious media, and all of the world watches it, sometimes more than their own media. So when something super bad happens in other countries, it might not even make the back page.
Okay,
Next,
yeah.
it's a common misconception that Americans don't use public transport. While it's true that we use cars a lot, many regions in America have great public transport, or at least just as good as Europe. Besides, what good is a train if nobody can afford it?
I can't lie, I've always been told that public transport in America isn't as good. Have I been lied to? I mean, I heard the buses were bad and little things like that. But yeah, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments what public transport is like where you live. Is it good? Is it bad? Do you use it? I'm really curious now. Obviously, I can guess like places like New York that public transport should be good. They've got the subway and things like that. Of course, it's a main city. Public transport's going to be good. But yeah, let me know what the public transport is like where you are.
We're looking at you, UK. Moving on.
Oh, wait.
Nobody can afford it. We're looking at you, UK.
Oh.
Moving on. America.
I get what he means by that. Train tickets in the UK are silly. Train tickets in the UK are silly. I live not even far from London. I'm just outside of London. So the price they would charge me to get into a London zone from where I am is absolutely crazy. But then once I'm in that zone, I can go from there to central London to the other side of London for about a quarter the price. So main train tickets are silly in the UK. Like, I know you could pay a couple of hundred just getting a 3-4 hour train journey. So yeah, I could see what he's saying there.
America does / is fill in the blank. America is far from being a unified entity. Each state has its own laws, cultures, and quirks. Some states have the death penalty. Some don't.
I still find that
Some
crazy.
have strict gun laws, and some don't.
Every
Some
state
have
is
free
different.
college. Some don't. some have tax, and yeah, some don't.
Hold on.
So just
Wait. Some states don't have tax? Did he just say that? Is there states that you don't pay tax in? I mean, are we talking about tax when you're working? Tax when you're going shopping? What type of tax are we talking about? Is there a state in America that's completely tax-free? Please let me know in the comments.
just like you can't say Europe is so-and-so, you can't say the same about the US. As an additional note, the states are far more independent than many of us realize. In fact, every state even has its own military, known as the Guard.
I didn't know that.
Furthermore, some states pass legislation that directly contradicts the federal government. This is because in the US, the federal government is not the highest authority, the states are.
Is it not? Hold on, wait. So what is the president in charge of? Is the president not the federal government? So yeah, let me know more details on that, because I am a little bit confused on that. The president is there, but the states are in charge. So yeah, I am confused.
Further establish the fact that America isn't a single entity. Many believe that Americans only speak one language, but that's no different from the rest of the world. Have you ever been to France, or the UK, or Italy, or how about China? Most of them only speak one language too. That being said, over 20% of the US is bilingual.
I would have thought that.
Now, let's talk about the military, because people outside the US will preach that America's military does, again, fill in the blank. Nobody is naive enough to think that the US doesn't have selfish interests in mind when it invades a country.
Right.
There isn't a nation on earth that would do that selflessly. But whenever the bad goes down, it's just as common for other countries to complain that America should do something. On a more or less lighter note,
where we going?
Americans are fat.
Oh.
You ever been to the UK lately? There are even scandals because obese patients are getting turned down for surgery.
It's true.
America
it's true.
does have an obesity problem. But not all citizens are involved in it. I am. A big part of the United States is fairly health conscious and is consistently working to help the overweight population better their lives. Thanks, healthy people. And while we aren't perfect, many complain that America is worse than other developed nations in, well, everything.
I don't know.
There are many statistics, child mortality, literacy, etc., where the US falls behind countries like Norway and Iceland. But those statistics are based on averages. In Norway, most of the...
I think in the UK, we've got people of all shapes and sizes. It's a mix across the board. But yeah, it is something you hear about America. I don't believe it's true, so yeah. Interesting though.
The 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian. If you took a similar sample of rich, white Americans in the US, you would find that the statistics are almost exactly the same. The fact is that the US is hugely diverse, and the American experience is completely different with and without money. Translation? The problem isn't healthcare or education, it's economic inequality, almost exclusively. And speaking of inequality, many make the simple but powerful assumption that America just isn't safe.
Yeah.
This is usually what foreign citizens say until they actually...
Honestly, yeah. The more reactions I've done and watched different videos, I've heard people saying that that's not what it's like. It's kind of put in the mind sometimes that all you're going to do when you walk around America is see people with guns on their side or carrying a gun or, yeah. And then I've had people say to me that they've gone to America and they didn't see one gun. Not even one gun. It's something that I used to believe maybe, but I don't believe anymore.
Come here. By this same logic, Paris, Brussels, London, Madrid, and almost every other city in Europe is unsafe as well. Yes, there are guns, but most Americans have never seen or heard a gun being fired. In fact, most Swiss citizens are much more familiar with gunfire than us Americans.
Okay.
All this being said so far, people still expect all Americans to relish in a life of our stereotypes. Guns, fast food, and freedom! What I'm saying is, a lot of the world looks at America as overly patriotic. But here's an honest question.
Is that not a good thing?
Have you ever met a Russian, Australian, a proud member of the UK? There's no shame in having pride in your country. Us Americans are definitely patriotic. But so is the rest of the world. As they should be. It's not a crime to be proud of where you came from.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that doesn't stop others from thinking we only complain and boast about America whenever we travel abroad. This is largely anecdotal. In America, Americans like to complain just like the rest of us. Only a few of them ever even leave the country, so you're meeting an unrepresentative sample. But
America is so big, you don't really need to leave. You don't really need to leave the US. That's purely because of the size of America. So I can understand why people don't leave the US. I don't think I would. I think if I was born in the US, I probably wouldn't leave. I wouldn't see the need to. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
in their defense, many times, they're right. Yes, this can hit hard in the pride spot, but maybe Europeans could stand to smile a bit more, right? No? Okay, fine.
Honestly, I know some miserable people. Some miserable people. And you get people all over like that. All over the UK that are just generally miserable. From what I've seen so far, in the US, a lot of people smile. A lot of people are happy. But yeah, you do. In the UK, you get some really miserable people.
Fine, back to the apathetic, leave me alone face. By the way, that part was written for our European representative. By our European representative. I love all of you. Anyways, statistics viewed by outsiders show that the US is lagging behind. Similar to topics we've
Really?
already discussed, there's another factor that we have to take into account. Reporting. Every nation reports its own statistics. This means that making statistical comparisons between two developed nations, like the US and the UK, is an exercise in futility. The data is just too close and won't reveal much except
You got,
that the
like,
US
all the
counts
big
people one
things for
way and the
America.
US counts them another.
Apple.
That still doesn't make this misconception true. Americans are fake. Here's the thing. In Europe, citizens are almost proud of the fact that they're really standoffish. But once you get to know them, they're your friend for life. Well, here's a newsflash. Once you get to know an American, they'll also be your friend for life. The thing is, though, they don't use this as an excuse to be a jerk in the beginning.
What?
This list sounds great coming from an American. I was totally the one who should have read this one, but I digress. On a totally different but very popular misconception, Americans are the only ones who call football soccer. Actually, a
No.
lot of the world calls it soccer.
I heard this before.
Even parts of Ireland still call it soccer.
Ireland? I didn't know
Oh,
that.
what do I mean by still? I'm glad you asked. It was actually the British who coined the term soccer.
Oh,
The word soccer
I didn't know
is
that
an
either.
abbreviation of association and first appeared in universities in the 1880s, sometimes using the variant spelled soccer
Interesting.
with a K. The word is sometimes credited to Charles Redford Brown, an Oxford University student said to have been fond of shortened forms such as brekkers for breakfast and rugger for rugby football. Britain actually started using the word football in the late 20th century, possibly because people incorrectly saw it as an Americanism. This next one, Tristan couldn't believe. Could you not?
No.
I'm learning something. To our American viewers, did you know that people in Europe make fun of you for using air conditioning? Why do they need it?
No.
Why don't they just leave the
No,
window open?
no.
Mosquitoes, at least in Florida. But here,
Listen, I've got AC in my car. And if I could have that inside my house, wow. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of aircon. I would absolutely love to have aircon in my house. I would absolutely love to have aircon. I've never heard anyone make fun of it. Honestly, when you get a hot day, you need it.
here's why they might be joining us soon. During the 2003 European heatwave, 70,000 people died. This was in large
Wow.
part due to the fact that European homes and buildings are not typically equipped with air conditioning. While they laugh at the Americans for this, hotter summers are going to force them to take appropriate measures, especially since children and the elderly are very susceptible. Again, I stand by mosquitoes. I'm not opening my window in the summer. Winter, absolutely. Open windows. Moving into the top 9, that's the weird number. Top 9. Many parts of the world accuse the United States of accounting for 25% of the world's carbon emissions. Not so nice. But it also accounts for 25% of the world's economic activity.
Oh.
The truth is that several nations, including countries like Canada, have higher per capita emissions than the US. Next, let's talk about how the world thinks
Interesting.
Americans are ruining English. Actually, both British English and American English have diverged from a common 16th century ancestral standard, and in some ways, American English is closer to the original than British English.
It is.
For example,
it is.
American
I won't
English
lie.
has, for the most part, retained the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British has, for the most part, dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English happened around the time of the American Revolution when wealthier Londoners wanted to distinguish themselves from the lower classes.
Hard.
This is only one example, but it goes to show that British English is not an unchanging standard any more than American English. On a totally different note, did you know that Americans don't all live in the suburbs? Nope, not true. The fact is that in America, you have plenty of people that live in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and
I do this.
the list goes on. In fact, several regions of the United States are very European, like the Northeast Corridor, for example. The difference between the U.S. and Europe is that if you want to live in the suburbs in the U.S., you can, but you don't have to. Now, this next one is just offensive. Americans are all dumb rednecks. While there are certainly Americans who fit this stereotype, the vast majority don't. Most Americans live in cities near the coasts. Most of them are educated, and most of them are not very different from Europeans in any significant way. Every country has a less educated populace that they themselves make fun of. Even sophisticated nations like Sweden and Switzerland. Fair warning, the last 5 on our list get a bit dark and crazy, starting with the idea that America is imperialistic. In many parts of Europe, the United States is seen as an aggressive imperial power, even more so than Russia and China. This is largely because our military presence both in Europe and everywhere else. But in our strong defense...
Maybe in different parts of Europe, but definitely not in the UK. I don't know, maybe in different countries or something, possibly, but yeah, definitely not in the UK.
Americans never forced you to watch our movies, quarter our soldiers, obey our laws, or get permission to leave your own countries. It was the Russians that did that, and much, much more. Food for thought, after World War II, the Americans liberated and left. The Russians liberated and stayed.
Yeah.
All right, number 4 is sure to be a shocker to a lot of foreigners. Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true. Except for a few places, the only people you'll ever see carrying guns in America are the police. In fact, you'll see more people walking around with guns in Switzerland than you ever would in America.
Again. In all fairness, you do see guns if you go into central London. You see like the armed police that are in the area, or maybe in the airports. But you do get these rumours like you're going to go to America, everyone's going to be walking around with a gun. But like I said before, I've kind of seen that that's not the case. But Switzerland, have they got the same laws as America? I'm curious about that now, because I never really thought about Switzerland with guns.
Okay. We admit that, like most stereotypes, there is some truth to this next one, but it's been wildly blown out of proportion. Americans are all crazy Christian right-wingers. There's something so right about saying it with that accent. Yes, there are a lot of Christians in America, and while some of them are crazy right-wingers, most of them aren't. In fact, if you ever get a chance to go and stay with one of those crazy Christian families, you'll see that most of them are just genuinely sweet people that go to church on Sundays.
Oh, okay.
This next one sounds like a legit stand-up joke. If you get injured and can't pay for it, you'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think this is what happens in America. As with most things that concern America, they're wrong.
I can see why people think it. I've heard stories of people getting into a cab instead of getting into an ambulance because it's so expensive to go in an ambulance. I don't know how true that is though, but I would have thought they couldn't just leave you to die. Even if you haven't got the money on you there, they would set up a payment plan or something. That's what I would think.
You can't be denied emergency medical care in the US.
Right, yeah.
That would go against the Hippocratic Oath. The difference is that you get a bill in the mail a few months later.
Okay,
Of course, debt is another issue, but let's get into that right now. Americans are all in debt. Actually, European citizens carry more debt than Americans.
Oh, really?
The average household debt in the US, OECD, is 113% of the household's income.
113.
In the UK, it's 156%.
It's working out.
Sweden,
What?
173. In the
How
UK,
much?
it's 156%.
156.
Sweden, 173. And in Denmark, it's a
Wow.
whopping 305%.
305.
So, what are some misconceptions about the US
Wow.
that you'd like cleared up? Or do you live in America and want to
Everyone in Denmark, that's quite 305. Wow.
put a stereotype to rest? Let us know in the comments below, or tweet your answer to us at list25. And as an American. I apologize for everything going on right now. Don't worry, 2020 is just around the corner.
Oh.
Really cool video, but I don't know, I think some of the things there have I learnt from doing reaction videos. But yeah, there was a lot of interesting things in that. Really good video. I'd really appreciate if you could hit the subscribe button. It massively helps out the channel we're growing. But for now, I'll see you on the next reaction.